June 22nd, 1945. Yeah, my father's Chester G. Crowther. My mother, Delilah Bullock Crowther. Good people. Right now we do family night and, all of these programs in the church. They just live the gospel. Never heard them argue. We were out camping once, and my uncle Laurel Hill, was laughing, and I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "I heard your parents arguing." I says, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And his dad would go da 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 da, and Mom would say, "Now Chester, da 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 da, now Chester." And that was the argument that they were doing. But I grew up in a home that there was really no contention in the home. Hill Air Force Base. My dad was in the military, Second World War. My dad moved from active duty to civil service. He actually had the same desk. So he went from active duty to civil service and didn't change chairs. They decided that the military families should have their blood type typed and then tattooed under their right arm, in the armpit. I was 2 years old, and I was having none of it. Mom said that 4 men held me while another one tattooed the A+ under my arm. But I know what my blood type is. And so I was tattooed long before it became cool. I was a wandering soul, and my mother said that she would take a rope and tie it around a tree and then tie it around me. And I figured out how to untie it on me, and I took the end and tied it back around the tree, and then I would take off again. So she had trouble keeping track of me. But at 2.5 years old, I was going out through the fields, and I had the little dog Dusty with me. I remember Dusty. And I climbed through a fence, and Dusty started going back home. And I called to Dusty, and he wasn't going with me. And so I took off by myself out through the fields, and there was a pond, and I remember the ducks and the ducks flying off as I went through the pond and then got to the railroad tracks. Now we're probably moving about 2 miles away from home now. At 2.5 years old. A train goes by, I wave, and whoever was up there waved to me. I remember him waving. And then I crossed the tracks, and then the military fence with all the wire and all of that stuff. But, I was little, and I just climbed under the fence. It was easy. And then the military police picked me up, and then according to the article that was in the Ogden Standard Examiner, is that they checked around the base to see if I belonged to anybody, and they couldn't find a home for me. And so the base commander's wife took me in, and then one of the neighbors had a collie dog, and so the collie dog got my scent and traced me clear back up to the military installation. And so he climbs in, and they were going to throw him in jail. And he says, "No, I'm looking for a boy." And so got reunited with my parents, but been a wandering soul all my life. So my grandma lived just across the hayfield. My dad bought a piece of property from my grandpa, and so we had my home and then the hayfield and then my grandpa and grandma. And so us kids would go through the hayfield, and Grandpa really appreciated us doing that and making paths through his hayfield. Grandma had this cookie jar, and so we would go over there, and she'd always have cookies, and it was just a warm, fun time to be over there. And she would do the farm thing. She was snapping beans or doing something, but we'd come over and into the cookie jar. big disappointment sometimes was she ran out of cookies and she put graham crackers in there. What a letdown. So anyway, Grandpa Crowther would take care of his hay and that, and he would get me up there on the seat, and I would be driving the tractor. You know how kids are, and I've done that with my kids and grandkids, doing the tractor and doing the cars and stuff. And I remember him stopping and getting out and walking over to the garden and pulling out a parsnip. And he took a knife and he peeled the parsnip, and then he cut a thin slice and ate it and just saved it. And do you want one, Jay? And I said, yes. He cut me one. That was the most awful vegetable I've if you've ever had a parsnip. That was a shock. Did not like that at all. But anyway, loved getting on there and interacting with Grandpa. Grandpa was very, very kind man, and so was Grandma. Good people. Then that was my dad's parents, Grandma and Grandpa Crowther, and then Grandma and Grandpa Bullock. They lived up in Ogden, and we would go and visit them. And Mom talked about being raised in the Depression, and my Grandpa Bullock was an old cowboy, mountain man, ran trap lines and had mines where he mined rock minerals, things that he was interested in. A very, very outdoors man. But during the Depression, nobody had anything really, and he took family in, took a lot of family in, took care of people that were hurting. So very, very reach out that way. But as a result, the girls, he had 9 girls and one son. His son died when he was like, I think it was 2 years old when he died. He fell out of a wagon. But the only clothes they had were their just common dresses, and so they went to church, and some of the people at church were so mean to them because they didn't come dressed up. They weren't necessarily clean or appropriate. Well, they would have been clean because I know the family, but everything was worn. And so Grandpa got mad, quit going to church, ended that. It was about 40 years later, he got up and started getting dressed one Sunday morning, and Grandma said, "So where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to go to church." And she says, "Wait a minute, I'll go with you." And then just about a year before she died, they were sealed in the Logan Temple. So, good people, good family, lots of cousins, and we would get on Grandpa's car and slide down from the top, in the old Packard. It was kind of a nice slide down to the ground as grandkids, and Grandpa came out with his bullwhip, cracking that thing, and Grandma scolded him and said, "Don't you scare the grandkids." So anyway, tough old man. Yeah, I asked him, I says, "Grandpa, I think I'm born 100 years too late." He looked at me and he says, "The good old days were hard old days. Just hard days." Yeah, my dad didn't baptize me. There was another boy being baptized. And so and I don't remember his name or anything, but his father baptized him and then baptized me, and then my dad confirmed me a member of the church. Dad was transferred by the military to out of Hill Air Force Base to Norton Air Base in Ohio, and his job was to declassify it. In other words, to shut it down. And so we were there for a year and he was in the inventory management, and so he was moving materials out of that base to another base. But when we were there, he was called as branch president of the Tiffin branch. And I turned 12 years old, so he ordained me into the Aaronic priesthood. And I was the only Aaronic priesthood in the branch, and so I did my duty, passing the sacrament and that. Interesting, the one who played the piano was not a member of the church, but his wife was, and so he would come and he would play the piano for us. It was above a bar where we met. So we rented the space on Sunday morning, and we'd get there early and clean up the beer cans and things, and get those out of the area so that we could have church. So small branch and good people. Dad got orders after they closed down the air base. He came home and says, we can go to Japan or we can go to California. And all of us kids says, California, we don't want to go to Japan. And the reason, we didn't want the shots. We didn't want to get all the shots because they would have given us the shots. But anyway, so we went to California and wound up in San Bernardino, California, and he was assigned out to the air base there. So I was in the 7th grade coming into California, and some interesting things there. It was right in the middle of the school year, 7th grade, and so I come in and I introduce myself, and the teacher, the social studies teacher, says, we're doing a kind of a term report situation, and we understand you're right in the end of it, and you can do something if you want. I said, okay. And so I got a subject and I wrote, it was a single page, and I turned it in. He called me up in the front of the class and berated my work so hard. He says, this is the worst report I've ever seen, and this is not the assignment, and you're completely out of line and all of that. I mean, just absolutely devastated me. And then he threw it in the trash in front of the class. And didn't give me a grade on it, but he wasn't intending to anyway because I was coming in at the end. But that was okay. And then it wasn't very long after that. There was this Jewish kid that was tall for his age in 7th grade, and he had hair, very, very hairy on his body for a kid. And I kind of befriended him. And I had other friends there, and one of them was named Bob. And he took exception because this Jewish kid was who they picked on, kind of. And he came up to me and he says, you're befriending Haliva. And I said, yeah, so? And he says, I don't want you doing that. I says, it's none of your business. He cold cocked me. I mean, just took his fist and hit me in the face. Just bam. I'm thinking, what? And he says, now pick up my books. And I turned around and he'd set his books there. I kicked him and I sent him as far as I could, and there were papers that went everywhere. And I walked away. That's the only fight I've ever been in. I didn't even fight back. Oh, skin diving. Yeah, we were in San Bernardino, and we were pretty close to the ocean. I mean, it was about an hour drive away, and so I took up skin diving, and that was one of our activities. We went, spent some time on the beach. Friends, David Herring, we'll probably talk about him a little bit. Met him when I was 12 years old, and we hung around and got our motorcycles and had our motorcycles together. And Ron Utter came in a little bit later with when we started at San Bernardino Valley College and did hiking. I mean, just loving life, just doing the teenage things. It was fun. One time we had this stupid idea. We says, if we get two motorcycles together, it'll look like a car, like this, and we'll go on a head-on towards some car that's coming, and then we'll split. Now, this has to be one of the dumbest ideas that a kid could have. And so here we are, we get the motorcycles, and we're coming towards this car that's coming this other way, the headlights and everything. And this guy screams to a stop and pulls over the side. and then we decide we got out of there. Gas was 22 cents a gallon, 25 cents a gallon back in the day. And some of these young men would come up in their car and give me 25 cents worth of gas. And for a gallon of gas like that, they could spend the night cruising Mount Vernon and having a good time. So, yeah, it's a fun time. It's, again, a job, just earning money, getting ready to go to college. McDonald's was just over on East Street there in San Bernardino. Hamburger was a dime. You get a bun, ketchup, and a pickle, and for 10 cents you had a hamburger. For 11 cents you could get a shake. 1963 I graduated from San Bernardino High School. And there was 1,000 kids in my graduating class. It was a big high school. And we had all of the elements. We had the Latinos and the blacks and the white kids, and I mean it was just mixed and tough school. It was tough. You had to be careful. My chemistry teacher, I love chemistry, I love math, loved chemistry. Didn't like English or Spanish or typing or any of that stuff. Interesting that the things that I used in my life mostly was my English and my typing and the stuff that I didn't like. But anyway, I remember my chemistry teacher taking a flask and just shaking it like this and holding the cork on it, and you could just see him doing it. And he didn't let go. He talked about the time that it did let go and went flying across the room, but not when I was in there. So I remember my mom sitting there in a chair when I come home from dates, and if you came on time, then pretty much you had a pass. You can go to bed. Came home late, there was time for discussion. You couldn't go to bed. You were into a good discussion about where have you been and what have you been doing. So, one time I came in at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't get any sleep that night because Mom was waiting. Light was on, and we had the discussion for the rest of the night. Now, we're in California, and so we're, 700 miles away. And he is in Utah, and he's dying from cancer. He's got liver cancer or a type of cancer that is devastating. I mean, he's in his bed, and he is wasting away. The night that he died, I would have been 16 years old. In 1960. And the night that he died, he showed up in my parents' room, and my mom woke up, and he leaned down and kissed her. And she turned around. Chet, the elbow. Chet, your dad's here. And Dad wakes up, and he's gone. But that was the night that he died. It was one of those things that a bunch of us young kids would go in. The instructor was over the YMCA, a big black fellow, strong. I mean, there wasn't any softness anywhere on him. And interesting, if we put the right throw or move on him, he would just fly over and land. And it was a beautiful thing. But if it wasn't right, your whole world turned upside down. I remember spinning in my head in the same spot, just spinning around and slamming on the mat. It's just one of those things. Good guy. Just love this instructor. We say, okay, what are you going to do? Some guys are coming at you, and he says, I'd run. He says, come on, you wouldn't run. You could beat him. He says, no, I'd run. I says, okay, you're in an alley. You can't run. And so he'd talk about anything he could do to avoid contact. And that was kind of the thing. The judo was not to go out and hurt somebody. It wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to de-escalate what the situation was. I'm the oldest, and my brother Victor is 2 years younger than I am, and Marvin was 9 years younger than I am. I got a motorcycle, a little Honda 50, and it would disappear regularly, and my younger brother Victor was out beating it up until he got his own motorcycle to beat up. Victor and Marvin both married, had good marriages, no divorces, good family, all of them, both of them. In San Bernardino, when we were growing up there in San Bernardino, California, there were a lot of areas out there that were left over from the war effort. They had bunkers and things. We'd go out in those fields and play on those and have BB gun wars and slingshot wars and things like that. And just not had things that kids did. Marvin was a lot younger, and so he was just the little tag-along brother. I mean, good kid, but we were separated by time. Yeah. Marvin's about 9 years younger than me, and so Victor and I were very close, and often they confused Victor and I as twins, but Marvin was 9 years younger, and so I didn't really have a lot of stories with Marvin other than he says we picked on him a lot, but I don't remember doing that. That's Marvin's claim. So, but anyway, Marvin has become very successful in his own right. Right now, he is a tax consultant, and very, very good tax consultant, I might add. Better than an accountant or a CPA, because he worked for the IRS for a number of years, and then he quit the IRS and created his own business, and he has clients from East Coast to West Coast. People find him, and he understands the tax law, and very, very successful in doing so. Right now he's in Branson, Missouri, lives in Branson, Missouri. A big home on the golf course. He just downsized out of that into a smaller home. We've been out there and visited him a number of times, he and his family, and has a beautiful family. Just, earning money, and so had the paper out, got up like at 4 o'clock in the morning and folded the papers and did my paper route. There's probably 50 papers. Just rode my bike, throwing the papers, and getting them up on the porch where I could and doing the best I could. So as I was finishing doing that paper route thing, I got my motorcycle. I had the money, got my motorcycle. My younger brother, Victor, decided to use my motorcycle. So he gets 2 paper routes, and he's doing the paper routes off the motorcycle. Not as well. Not as well on the porch, but he did get tangled up in a dog and did a face plant, skinned him up pretty bad. And then, I would come home. He got his own motorcycle after a while, and he was doing the paper route with his motorcycle. But I would come home, and my motorcycle would be scuffed up. What in the world is going on? Well, Victor was going out into the fields and doing jumps with my motorcycle. It's a little Honda 50. I mean, it's not a big deal. But and then he takes his motorcycle and he ports it and strokes it, and that the thing would go faster than the Honda 90s. He would it's a little Honda 50, and he could pop a four-wheel in the fourth gear on that thing. He was more mechanically inclined than I was. He was always doing something like that.